The courtroom is quiet. The only noise is the reverberation of a gavel hitting wood. Kody Brown sits at the defense table, sweat beading at his temple, while Christine looks on with eyes that no longer burn with love, only flames. What was once a family united in faith and community is now a war zone of betrayal, deceit, and a struggle for justice. The atmosphere within the courtroom is heavy, too heavy to breathe. The beige walls hold a sort of quietness that makes each cough, each rustle of paper sound louder than it needs to. A few creaking fans lazily in the background do nothing to dissipate the rising tension. Kody Brown is seated stiffly in the defendant's table, jaw clenched, lips pursed into a tight line. His perfectly coiffed blonde hair now hangs slightly limp, as though even his own ego has crumpled under the gravity of the moment. Next to him sits Robin, holding a tissue, red-eyed from weeping, but no tears fall now. Across the aisle, Christine sits rigid and unblinking. Her hands are clasped neatly in her lap, but her knuckles are white from the strain. She doesn't blink much. Her eyes remain fixed on Kody as if challenging him to glance back. To her right, Janelle fidgets restlessly in her seat, conflicted between duty and freedom. Mary, seated apart and withdrawn, dodges all eyes, instead looking at the gleaming wood floor. The judge, a strict woman with piercing glasses and an even more piercing tone, clears her throat. This court is now in session. We are convening today to hear the case of Christine Brown versus Kody Brown. A ripple of collective gasp runs through the gathering of family members, reporters, and curious strangers who have watched the sister wives' drama unfold for years. No cameras are permitted inside, but the mere whispers guarantee that within a night, all the details will have leaked onto the internet. Christine Brown claims fraud, emotional distress, and financial manipulation, the judge recites. Her tone does not quiver. The court will hear testimony from both parties. Let us begin. Christine's attorney, a calm woman in her mid-40s with a piercing stare, stands up first. Your Honor, this is not merely a divorce case. This is a case about fraud, about years of secret accounts, broken promises, and the destruction of a family in the name of religion. She points to Christine. My client gave up everything, her youth, her money, her emotional health, only to find out that the man she trusted most was secretly fighting against her behind closed doors. The room tenses. Kody leans in close to his attorney, mumbling urgently, but his microphone catches a soft murmur, something about lies and out of context. Christine remains unfazed. Christine's attorney summons her to the witness stand. Christine stands up slowly, her skirt sweeping the ground, and walks to the witness box. The bailiff administers the oath, and she rests her hand on the Bible with firm determination. Her tone is relaxed initially. I invested 30 years of my life to a man who promised me equality. Instead, I discovered I was excluded, disregarded, and ultimately discarded. But what stung more wasn't the rejection. It was learning that while I was keeping this family together, Kody was draining accounts, transferring assets, and plotting a future without me in it. The words burn. Janelle's eyes move a little wider. Robin blots her eyes again, though her mouth twitches with the strain of holding back a reaction. Christine goes on, her voice gaining momentum. He talked me into selling real estate that was in my name. He talked me into investing in land I'd never set eyes on. And when I asked him where the money went, he offered me silence. Gasps wash over again. Christine doesn't weep. She doesn't shatter. She talks like each sentence has been waiting all those years to be released. Kody finally loses it, slapping his hand down on the table. That's not true. You have no idea what you're saying. The judge thunders her gavel. Mr. Brown, you will hold your tongue until it is time for you to present. Courtroom comes alive now, tension thrumming through the air, reporters writing madly, the audience leaning forward in their seats. Christine's attorney places a folder on the bench, papers spilling out. Exhibit A. Bank statements, property deeds, and unauthorized financial transfers. The judge leans forward, adjusting her glasses. Kody's face turns bright red. His attorney starts objecting, words spilling out quickly. Irrelevant, mischaracterized, misleading. but the judge lets the evidence in. Christine does not glance at the documents. She does not have to. Her gaze remains fixed on Kody, and for the first time, he averts his eyes. During the course of the first day of testimony, it becomes apparent this is not only about lost love. It is about power, money, deception, and the destruction of an empire founded on faith and family. But just when Christine thinks she has the upper hand, Kody's lawyer rises with a smirk. Your Honor, if we're going to talk about hidden truths, perhaps Christine would like to explain a certain letter she sent last year. A letter she never expected to see the light of day. The courtroom gasps once more. Christine tenses, her lips opening in shock. A flash of fear crosses her expression, and Kody finally gives a grin. And with that, the judge orders a recess. Christine is frozen in place, her heart racing, as the looming shadow of that letter threatens to destroy all she's just battled to establish. When the courtroom doors opened again after recess, the mood had changed, the air was thicker, and whispers ran hot as fire through the gallery as everyone wondered what this enigmatic letter might be. And all eyes were on Christine seated stock-still, her face pale but set, her heart hammering faster than she dared anyone to notice, while Kody sat back in his chair with an uncharacteristic air of confidence, almost smug, as if this moment had been practiced 100 times in his mind, and Robin sat beside him nodding softly as if reassuring herself that justice, or at least Kody's version of it, finally would be revealed. The judge raised her gavel and called the room to order, her voice steady but inflected with annoyance, and Kody's lawyer stood upright, a thin smile across his face as he held a single sealed envelope in his hand, the kind of envelope that seems innocently ordinary but has the power to wreck lives. And when he said, "Your Honor, this letter was written by Christine Brown to a third party only 1 year prior to the time she brought this case," the room gasped as a whole, and Christine stiffened but remained silent, her lawyer's hand lightly resting on her arm in silent reassurance. But the glint in Christine's eyes gave away that she already knew what was contained within. She wrote it, after all, though never meant for the world to hear it read aloud, and the lawyer carefully unfolded the letter, his voice booming with deliberate weight as he began, "To whom it may concern, I don't know how much longer I can do this, living in the shadows of lies and bitterness, pretending our family is whole when inside I feel like I'm breaking apart. I question myself at times whether Kody ever truly loved me or if I was just another pawn in his game of domination. I want to escape. I want to leave it all behind. But what frightens me the most is what will become of me if the truth regarding my own decisions comes to light." Here the courtroom hummed like an agitated hive, heads cocked forward, reporters frantically scribbling, and Christine dropped her eyes, her lips quivering though no sound escaped, while Kody smiled with the smugness of a man who had convinced himself that the tide had finally shifted. The judge held up a hand for quiet, her gaze narrowing on the lawyer. "Read what pertains, counselor, and try to keep the theatrics at bay," she instructed, though even she couldn't conceal the interest carved into her face. The lawyer cleared his throat and went on, his tone heavy with a combination of victory and accusation. "I have erred also, things I hope will never be found out. But if they are, I know Kody will distort them, he always does. Nevertheless, I cannot endure this life any longer, and I might have to risk everything just to breathe freely again." Gasps again, whispers, the gallery with venomous speculation, and in an instant Christine's lawyer leapt to her feet. "Objection, Your Honor. It's a personal letter. It's not evidence of manipulation or fraud. It's emotional expression at best and irrelevant at worst." But Kody's attorney immediately responded smoothly. "Your Honor, this letter happens to address credibility. If Mrs. Brown admits that she herself has secrets, how can we possibly be certain the accusations she makes against my client are not clouded by her own fault?" The judge rocked back, obviously considering both sides before finally inclining his head. "I will permit the letter, but only to the extent that it addresses intent and credibility. Go on cautiously." And with that, the attorney placed the letter down with a flourish and indicated toward Christine. "Mrs. Brown, do you care to explain to this court precisely what those errors were? Because until you do, the shadow of that letter will hang over everything you say." Christine's mouth was dry, her hands clenching the edge of the witness box. Her lawyer hissed at her to stay calm, but the harm was done. The audience was restive, Kody's smile grew only wider, and for the first time since trial commenced, Christine's rock-like composure started to break. She glanced over the aisle at Janelle's shocked and confused face, and then at Mary, who would not meet her gaze, and then at last at Robin, staring back with tears brimming but also with a perverse satisfaction, as if this were the vindication she had been praying for. Christine swallowed hard, her voice at last breaking the silence, quivering yet rebellious. "Yes, I wrote that letter. Yes, I did make errors. But the error I committed wasn't what you'd think. It was silence for too long. I let myself be manipulated, controlled, and yes, doubted myself. But where my errors differ from Kody's is this. Mine were words of fear, his were acts of betrayal." Courtroom exploded for a second time, half gasps, half murmurs of assent, and the judge was even forced to ring the gavel in an attempt to restore order, her stern face relaxing for a fraction of a moment as she looked at Christine, as if just acknowledging the bravery it had taken to speak those words out loud. Kody's attorney was not yet done. He pushed on, voice harder now. "So you're admitting you lied? You confess you were keeping secrets from your family?" Christine leaned forward, her eyes burning at last. "I confess I was afraid. Confess I was human. But I never lied about what counted. Can you truthfully say the same thing about Kody?" The lawyer hesitated, ever so briefly, but Kody leapt in, unable to keep silent. "You're taking everything out of context. You walked out because you craved attention, because you couldn't take responsibility." The judge brought down her gavel once more, glaring at him. "Mr. Brown, compose yourself." But the damage was done. The image of the erstwhile composed, commanding patriarch was shattering before everyone's eyes. Christine's attorney stood once more, this time with passion in her voice. "Your Honor, if my client's private letter is admissible, then so should be the myriad of private messages, contracts, and vows Kody Brown made and then violated. We have receipts, text messages, and witnesses who will swear under oath that even as Christine was writing words of desperation, Kody was masterminding deception." And so she gestured to the bailiff, who brought in a towering stack of binders so heavy it creaked the wooden bench. The gallery exploded again, reporters scribbling furiously, people straining their necks to look. Kody shifted awkwardly, his previous confidence wavering, his face reddening as the binders hit the table with a crash. Undefined Robin placed a hand on his, but he jerked it away, grumbling under his breath, the microphone picking up just enough. "This isn't supposed to be happening." The judge permitted Christine's attorney to continue, and what ensued was a heartbreaking unraveling. Page upon page of documentation revealing property transfers, clandestine meetings with financial planners, texting Robin ahead of time about making purchases behind the other wives' backs, and even a written assurance by Kody himself that the land on which she had invested was safe in her name, only to afterwards submit documents contrary to it. Each discovery was a dagger, sharper than the previous one, and the audience was barely able to keep their shock from bubbling out. Not until Christine settled further into her seat with each turning page, her determination stiffening as Kody started fidgeting, casting anxious glances at his lawyer, who himself was less confident and more trapped. And yet, just when it had looked as though Christine had regained full control of the story, Kody's attorney stood up again, his face white but resolute, and served up a last-minute twist that left the room gasping for breath. "Your Honor, if the court permits the introduction of private writings and communications, then we too shall subpoena witnesses. Witnesses who will testify that Christine herself manipulated the family, sowed division, and even plotted to leave long before she ever claimed to be a victim. And one of those witnesses," he paused, glancing around the room, "sits here in this courtroom." A silence fell so profound it was as if the room held its breath, and then slowly, intentionally, Robin Brown stood up from her place beside Kody, her tissue dropping to the floor, her footsteps ringing on the smooth wood as she moved towards the witness stand, her eyes shining but her jaw set, as if she had finally found the courage to do what she knew was right. And as the bailiff administered the oath, Christine's heart dropped, because she knew that whatever was about to be said had the potential to destroy not only her case but the last vestiges of trust between them all. And with Robin on the stand, her voice shaking but firm, the actual fight was only just commencing. The courtroom still reverberated with whispers when Robin shifted on the witness stand, her hand shaking ever so slightly as she pushed a dark strand of hair behind her ear, her eyes flicking between Kody, who gave her a supportive nod, and Christine, who sat like a stone, steeling herself for impact, because she knew better than anyone that when Robin spoke, the story could be turned around in deadly ways. The judge leaned forward, pen hovering above notepad as she reminded Robin of her oath. And then the silence built until it was almost palpable, punctuated only by the nervous throat clearing before Robin began, her voice low but firm. I never wanted it to come to this. I never thought our family would stand before strangers destroying one another. But I cannot sit idly by and allow lies ruin Kody's reputation and all we created together. And the audience exploded in murmurings, some sympathetic, some distrustful, while Christine's lawyer sat rigidly, waiting for the knife that was bound to come. Robin drew a shaky breath and went on. Christine speaks of being a victim, but what she does not tell you is that she planned her escape years ago. She sowed seeds of doubt in Janelle. She whispered about how the family would disintegrate if Kody did not change, and when she saw her opportunity, she took it. She left and made him the bad guy, though she was the one bringing down the house. Christine's face was unreadable, but her fingers gripped the wooden armrest of the witness stand until the knuckles whitened, and Janelle fidgeted uncomfortably in her seat, the words hitting too close to conversations she had shared herself with Christine in private, words she had thought safe, but now distorted in public to sound like a conspiracy. Robin wiped her eyes on the back of her hand, her voice shaking now with emotion. I did love Christine, I really did. I wanted us to be sisters, but she always held back, and behind that smile was resentment, bitterness, and anger. And I know this because she once said to me that she would burn it all down if Kody wouldn't give her the respect she was owed. A gasp ran through the gallery, reporters writing furiously, while Christine's eyes finally met Robin's, the piercing stares like daggers, her lips open as if to speak, but her lawyer putting a gentle hand on her arm, telling her to wait because the more Robin said, the more they might have to fight back. Robin went on, her voice heightening. She manipulated us all and she's not innocent. She was saving money on the side. Money she never told Kody about, money she was going to use for her new life. How is it trust? How is it partnership? She's playing martyr, but she was willing to bolt long before she ever said Kody betrayed her. Christine's chest swelled and deflated with quick breath, a tempest raging beneath her placid exterior, and Janelle's gaze flashed toward her seeking honesty because she had heard rumors, yes, but hearing them here under oath made them seem heavier, more incriminating, and the members of the jury glanced at one another, their pens scratched scribbling faster as the case darkened, grew messy. Christine's attorney finally rose, her tone biting. Objection, Your Honor, this is character assassination, not evidence. The judge arched her brow but permitted Robin to proceed with care, cautioning her to keep to facts, and Christine's attorney moved forward to cross-examine, her heels clicking against the wooden floor with the assurance of one set to bleed. She paced around Robin at a slow pace, voice unshrill but incisive. Mrs. Brown, you mentioned that Christine spared money secretly, right? Robin nodded hastily. Yes, she confessed it to me confidentially. The lawyer leaned on her head, her eyes scanning. Do you have evidence for this? Any bank statements? Any records? Robin hesitated, her lips clamping together before she whispered, No, but she told me. The attorney jumped on it, her voice rising. So you have no proof, only your word, the word of someone who stands directly to gain from Kody's defense, is that correct? The gallery stirred again, and Robin's eyes widened as she tried to steady herself. I'm telling the truth. The lawyer stepped closer, lowering her tone but sharpening the blade of her words. The truth, Mrs. Brown, or your truth? Because there is a difference, and here in this courtroom we require evidence, not rumor. The jury shifted, some of them nodding, and Christine took a quiet breath, the smallest whisper of relief playing about her lips, because while Robin's words stung, they were also falling apart under examination. But then Robin's attorney, Kody's lawyer, interjected to steer things back. Mrs. Brown, did Christine ever state in so many words that she wanted to ruin Kody? Robin nodded hastily. Yes, she told me she'd burn it down if things were not altered. Christine's attorney protested again. Out of context. She was talking about her own suffering, not demolishing. The judge permitted the statement but cautioned the jury to consider the credibility seriously. The tension was suffocating, every word molding the battlefield like chessmen moving into position, and Christine finally leaned forward, voice slicing through the air with precision. Robin, do you really want to do this? Would you like to sit here under oath and deny that you have knowledge of the truth regarding Kody's deceptions, regarding the promises he made to you behind closed doors when the rest of us were kept in the dark? The judge held up a hand. Mrs. Brown, you'll make all your statements to the court. But Christine's flames of passion had already been lit, her voice quivering but forceful. Because if you want to discuss secrets, Robin, let's discuss the secret bank account Kody opened in your name alone, the one he used to take money from the family account when the rest of us were barely getting by. The courtroom erupted, gasps louder than ever before, Robin's face going white as she opened and closed her mouth, stammering, "That's not true, it's not what you think." But Christine's attorney held up a folder, steady and calm. "Your Honor, we have documentation." The judge ordered silence, her gavel striking repeatedly, the tension so sharp it felt like the air itself could shatter, and Kody leapt up, his voice booming. "This is outrageous, undefined, that account was for family purposes only." But the judge shut him up with a glare. "Sit down, Mr. Brown." The jury's eyes grew wide, some leaning forward, others murmuring to each other, as Christine's attorney placed the evidence on the bench. Bank transfers, checks signed solely by Kody and Robin, money skimmed from joint property sales. Robin shook, her tears genuine now, her words breaking as she attempted to explain. "I didn't know, I thought it was for all of us." But Christine's attorney interrupted. "Did you spend the money, Mrs. Brown?" Undefined, Robin paused, her silence more eloquent than any admission, and the gallery knew in an instant that she had. Christine sat back, her breast heaving with the burden of vindication, but her eyes wet with sorrow as well, because this was not a win. This was an affirmation of betrayal. Kody's attorney struggled to try and change the subject. "Your Honor, this has no bearing on the charges." But the judge motioned to her. "In fact, it goes to the issue of the credibility of the defendant and this witness." Punch had been made, and the dynamics in the courtroom were altered once again, now severely against Kody and Robin. The session went on into the evening, each disclosure piling shock upon shock, and the onlookers remained pinned, not wanting to miss a thing. It was not until the judge finally declared adjournment that the courtroom resembled a battlefield littered with debris, reputations shredded, allegiances broken. Christine compiled her documents, her attorney urging her on in hushed tones, but her expression showed exhaustion coupled with a silent resolve. Across the aisle, Robin slumped, her tissue torn into bits in her hands as Kody stormed out, his jaw set, his eyes blazing with anger not at himself but at Christine, at the system, at anyone who would reveal him. The crowd poured out into the corridors, journalists calling out questions, cameras popping outside the courthouse doors, and although no one had the slightest idea what tomorrow's hearing would be like, one thing was certain: the sister wives were no longer simply a broken-up family. They were now belligerents in a war where every word, every lie, every deception could turn the tide, and the worst was yet to come. The fourth day of testimony opened with a tension so pronounced you could feel it against your skin, the gallery already abuzz before the judge even arrived, because everyone had an idea of what was coming. Kody Brown, the patriarch, the focal point, was about to testify, and for some, this was the moment they had been waiting for, to finally hear his voice unadulterated, his version of the story sworn under oath, free of the television cameras and sound bites edited for drama. When the bailiff summoned his name, Kody rose slowly, shoulders back, blonde hair combed to perfection, though his eyes revealed a hurricane of rage and terror that no grooming could camouflage, and when he moved toward the witness box, Christine's stare followed him like a specter, fixed and unyielding, while Janelle shifted uncomfortably, torn between memory of loyalty and the ache of betrayal, and Mary remained apart, mask-like face unreadable. The judge watched him closely as the oath was administered. Right hand raised, voice firm but shaking just so at the end. "I do." And then he seated himself, fingers gripping the armrests as though he needed to stake himself to the ground beneath. His attorney came first, voice smooth, practiced, attempting to make Kody sound like a misunderstood man, a father and husband stretched too thin by unreasonable expectations, a man shouldering burdens invisible to everyone else. "Mr. Brown," his attorney started, "how would you characterize your place in this family?" And Kody moved forward, his tone laced with a combination of pride and outrage. "I was the provider, the leader, the glue that kept everything together. I laid my life on the line for these women, for our children, for a vision greater than any one of us. And now they stand here, ripping me to pieces, turning my sacrifices into sins." The gallery whispered once more, and even the judge moved slightly, her eyes darting to Kody with no expression of sympathy. Kody growled to his attorney in a harsh whisper, but there was no salvaging dignity now. Janelle's words had cut deep, and the smell hung in the air. Then Christine's attorney phoned Mary, and the room swayed as she stood up slowly, half reluctantly, her footsteps ringing with uncertainty because Mary had always been a quiet presence at the edge of the chaos. Not entirely with Christine, not entirely with Kody, but always on the periphery. Yet now she was being drawn into the center, and when she sat in the witness box, the court leaned forward, eager for what she would say. Her attorney's questions were straightforward, but her responses sliced with understated precision. Kody and I, we weren't a couple anymore a long time back. Everyone was aware of that, even though nobody spoke it. But what is important here isn't about me, it's about what I witnessed occur to Christine. I might not have fought with them, but I witnessed how he dismissed her, how he belittled her, how whenever she cried out for justice, he made her out to be the issue. Her voice cracked, her eyes brimming with tears. I know what it is like to be invisible, and I watched him make her invisible too. That's the truth. The ensuing silence was agonizing, the heaviness of confession draped over the room like a boulder, and even Robin, quick to intervene, had nothing to say, her hand grasping Kody's arm harder as if to keep him from falling apart by sheer force of will. The attorneys acted fast now, gaining steam, summoning not only the wives but even the children. Adult now, with voices of their own, pain of their own to voice, and they took turns relating a father who was here in glimpses but gone in substance, a man who taught oneness but lived on dissonance, who asked loyalty but did not pay it back, and with each sentence another fissure in the carefully constructed wall of defense Kody had attempted to stand behind. His attorney protested where he could, but the judge permitted much of it, observing relevance to both economic responsibility and emotional obligation. And with each passing moment, Kody's stance drooped farther, his face growing redder, his ire seething just beneath the surface. And when Christine's attorney finally spoke directly to him, her voice turned keen. Mr. Brown, do you deny these accounts? Do you dispute that Christine was promised equity that never materialized, fairness that never materialized, love that was taken away while money was transferred in the dark? Kody exploded, slapping his hand on the table, his voice booming. You don't get it! None of you get it what it is like to head this family, to bear this weight. I gave it all, everything undefined, and this is how they reward me, undefined, with deceit, with betrayal, with assassination of my character? The judge slammed her gavel the moment she warned him again, but his words resounded even as he was silenced, a man coming apart before the world. Christine's attorney didn't blink, her tone frosty as she answered, Mr. Brown, leadership isn't how much you command. It's how much you share without demanding control in return. And by all accounts presented here today, you flunked that test. The gallery hummed, reporters writing furiously, cameras outside the door poised to catch the backlash, and for the first time, Kody's shoulders drooped, his defiance guttering like a candle in the wind, though his eyes remained afire with unrepentant fury. Christine remained seated, hands folded, lips shivering but eyes firm, for this was the day she had struggled for. The day her truth no longer belonged to her alone but was supported by the voices of others, which could no longer be ignored. And when the judge at last adjourned, her voice laden with sternness, this court will continue tomorrow. Let us recall, dignity must be preserved in these proceedings. The gavel's ring sounded more like a pause and a warning, because despite Christine having delivered crushing blows this day, Kody was no man to give up easily, and tomorrow held promise of escalation. As the courtroom cleared, the Browns walked past one another in silence, Robin tugging Kody along, her whispers urgent, Janelle and Christine walking side by side for the first time in decades, their pace deliberate, their union remade in the heat of testimony, while Mary walked behind them, her face impassive, but her words still lingering in the air like a specter, words that even Kody could not escape. I know what it feels like to be invisible. And outside, the world waited, the headlines already written, the story already changing. The question no longer whether or not Kody Brown was the glue that bound his family together, but whether he was the force that had quietly, relentlessly unraveled it. The sixth day broke heavy with foreboding, courthouse steps thronged with reporters and spectators whose mutterings filled the air with static, all of them waiting to see if today would be the breakdown or the breakthrough, because today Christine's team had said they would call Robin Brown to the stand. And although she had been a quiet presence at Kody's side throughout the trial, tissues clutched and whispered words of encouragement in his ear. Prospect of her voice ringing out in the courtroom guaranteed fireworks, for Robin was no ordinary wife. She was the wife, the favorite one, the one whose arrival had altered the balance of the family and set rivalries aflame that never truly cooled. And as the gavel rang out and the session began, the judge's stern face did little to calm the tempest bubbling just below the surface. Christine was steady, though her chest rose and fell with controlled breaths, while Janelle's eyes remained sharp, narrowed on the woman who had once been sister to them and now represented the symbol of all they had lost. And when the bailiff called her name, Robin emerged from her seat, her steps hesitant at first but growing stronger as if each step reminded her that she had a duty to defend the man beside her. And when she was sworn in, her hands shook around the Bible, her voice no more than a whisper, "I do," before she collapsed into the witness chair, eyes already shining as she clutched another tissue. Christine's attorney didn't waste a moment, her voice brisk but level. "Mrs. Brown, you've been sitting here during this trial, listening to charges of financial impropriety and emotional damage. Don't you deny that your husband put you and your children ahead of the others?" Robin looked at Kody, her mouth quivering before she replied, I don't see it that way. He didn't put me first. He was simply attempting to create stability, something we others couldn't recognize then. Yes, perhaps I did gain, but that wasn't his doing. That wasn't manipulation. That was his leadership. The room hushed, the accustomed defense running in rehearsed rhythm, but Christine's attorney persisted. Leadership isn't about gaining one at the expense of others. Did you sign property deeds on which Christine's name was not included? Did you receive money that had been transferred from accounts Christine had made contributions to? Robin's voice cracked, her eyes watering. I signed what I was instructed to sign. I trusted my husband. I never thought I was taking from Christine. I believed it was part of family plan. The lawyer's tone hardened. A family plan that left one wife with nothing and you with everything? There was silence, Robin's lips quivering as she attempted to reply, the words failing her, her hands twisting as she finally whispered, I never wanted to hurt her. Christine's expression softened for the merest instant at Robin's words, but her determination snapped back into place, because sympathy wouldn't be the one winning this fight, and Christine's attorney kept pressing, producing sheets of financial records that indicated money diverted to properties owned by Robin's name, accounts where her children's requirements were catered to at the expense of others, and each document read like an open sore. Robin attempted to deflect, attempted to cast the picture of a beleaguered wife obeying orders, but the cracks appeared when Christine's attorney inquired, Mrs. Brown, did you ever once stand up for Christine? Did you ever once question why her name was gone? Why her efforts vanished? Robin's face fell then, her sobs spilling over. I was afraid. I didn't want to lose him. I believed if I pushed back, if I challenged him, I'd be next, I'd be on the outside like Christine was, and I couldn't allow that to occur. The confession shocked the courtroom, a raw emotion pouring from Robin's mouth that she hadn't meant to reveal, but once uttered it was real. She had opted for self-survival over sisterhood, silence over truth, and Christine's attorney pounced on it with precision. So you admit you observed what was occurring. You acknowledge you knew Christine was being excluded, and you did nothing for fear of losing favor? Robin's weeping became louder, Kody's face contorted in rage as he softly spat at his attorney, but the gavel of the judge hushed the courtroom once more, the reverberations reminding all that passion didn't void responsibility. Kody's attorney stood then, his voice gentle, attempting to mend the ruin. Mrs. Brown, do you think that what you witnessed wasn't betrayal but a misunderstanding? That Christine just misread the dynamics of a big family? Robin clung to the lifeline, nodding through tears. Yes, it was so complicated. None of us knew the weight he bore. He wasn't attempting to hurt us, he was attempting to keep us together. But Christine's attorney quickly intervened, her tone slicing through the courtroom, and yet holding together resulted in the destruction of one woman. Holding together meant securing you while eliminating her. Ask you, Mrs. Brown, when you cried yourself to sleep last night in your new house, did you ever once give a thought to the woman who contributed to pay for it but was left behind? Robin's crying subsided into quiet, her head down, her tissue balled in her fists, unable to speak, And in that quiet the gallery adjusted, eyes moving, minds racing with the understanding that the so-called unity had always been constructed upon selective compassion. The judge leaned over, her words measured. Mrs. Brown, this court requires honesty above all. You didn't mean to do any harm, but intent does not wash away effect. Robin nodded feebly, murmuring, I see, though the expression in her eyes betrayed the turmoil still seething within her, a turmoil of guilt, love, and fear, and as she descended from the witness stand, flanked by the bailiff, she refused Christine's eye contact, her shoulders sagging under the burden of what she had uncovered. Kody grabbed her hand as she came back to his side, whispering hotly, You didn't have to say that, but Robin just shook her head, her eyes bloodshot, not able to look at his anger, because she knew in her heart that her words had chipped away his armor in a manner no lawyer could repair. Christine relaxed, her hands shaking now not with fear but with the adrenaline of forward motion. The knowledge that Robin's testimony, painful as it was, had confirmed her accusations more thoroughly than any ledger ever could. Undefined Janelle inched forward, leaning in to whisper something in Christine's ear that she alone could hear, and Christine nodded barely perceptibly, her lips compressing into a line that said, We are getting close. The gallery hummed with rumor, journalists already writing headlines regarding Robin's breaking point, the fissures in the front they presented, and though the judge ordered recess, the atmosphere in the courtroom would not subside, the murmurs following the Browns from the room, Kody pushing ahead with his jaw clenched, Robin behind him, holding onto tissues like lifelines, Christine and Janelle leaving together, their steps slow but unhurried, their bond unbreakable than the hurricane they had just survived. Outside, the flash of cameras, queries thrown, but within the hearts of all who had heard the testimony, the same question prevailed. What else remained concealed, and how black could the truth become before a final judgment was made? The seventh day in court came like a storm cloud that everyone could sense before they saw it, because today Christine's lawyers were going to call the most unlikely and vulnerable witnesses of all. The children, now adults, whose voices had long been overridden by the noisier arguments of their parents, and as the gavel came down and the judge called the session into being, a silence ran through the courtroom, heavier than any other, 'cause nothing weighs more in a family case than the words of the children who lived it, and the first to step forward was Aspen, Christine's eldest child, her head high, her face level though her eyes glistened with tears, and as she was sworn in and sat down, the silence was complete, as if the very walls leaned forward to hear what she had to say. Christine's lawyer began softly, her tone cautious but unyielding. Aspen, can you tell the court what it was like growing up in this family? What you saw, what you felt. Aspen's voice began softly, but it gained power quickly. I loved my family, all of us together, the chaos, the love, but it wasn't fair. We all knew Dad loved Mom, Robin more. We knew because he was there more, because her kids received what we didn't, because when Christine cried, he told her to stop being dramatic. We saw it. We lived it. And it wasn't unfair, no, it was cruel. A commotion rippled through the gallery. Christine dropped her head, silent tears running down her cheek, as Kody fidgeted in his seat, his jaw hardened, his stare locked on the daughter who had looked up to him with only admiration. The lawyer continued, Did you ever feel that Christine's fears were minimized? Aspen nodded, her voice breaking. Every time. She attempted to stand up for us, and he made her feel insignificant. He'd berate her by calling her ungrateful, tell her she was destroying the family, but she was the one defending us. She was the one who comforted us when he did not appear. The words had weight, each one a cut more severe than the previous, and the audience leaned forward as Aspen's eyes brimmed over, her voice shaking now. I want him to know that I witnessed everything, that I am no longer a child who can be easily swayed otherwise. I know what he did. I know how he shattered her. Then Pedon appeared, imposing and tall, his walk intent as he approached the stand, commanding the focus of all the people in the room, and when he spoke, his tone was different, frank, biting, with a burning anger that had been suppressed for years. I don't care what excuses are made in here. I don't care about paperwork or who signed what. I am concerned about the fact that I saw my mom dwindle into who she wasn't. I saw her lose herself as my father constructed a new life on the other side of town. He said family was for a lifetime, but he didn't practice it. He said we were equal, but we weren't. He said love was infinite, but it was over the moment someone didn't agree with him. The words hit like sledgehammers, Kody's face flushing, his fists clenching on the table, Robin whispering frantically at his elbow, but Paydon went on, relentless. You speak of leadership, of bearing a burden? Leadership is being present. A leadership is loving all of them, not the ones who make you feel good about yourself. And you didn't even show up, Dad. Not for Mom. Not for us. Not when it counted. Courtroom was locked in place, no one even thinking to breathe as Paydon leaned forward, his gaze intense on Kody. You didn't lose this family. You left it. And now you're angry because we finally notice it. Christine put her hand to her mouth, her tears spilling out as Janelle put her hand on her shoulder to steady her, and even Mary squirmed in her seat, her eyes shining though she quickly glanced away. And then Michael T., a softer face, a kinder voice but no less sharp. I worked for years to maintain the peace, to think that Dad was trying the best he could, but the thing is, I saw my mom's light fade because of him. I saw her struggle for what's fair and get in trouble for it. I saw her listen and give and receive nothing in return. And the most difficult thing wasn't even what he did to her, it was what it did to us. Because when you watch your mom broken, you begin to think that's what love is supposed to be. And it took me years to learn otherwise. Her voice trembled as she looked at Kody straight on. You made us question ourselves. You made us question what we deserved. But I no longer doubt and I no longer question. I know Mom was owed better. And so were we. The gallery smeared their own tears now, the power of her words radiating through the room, and even the judge's face softened for a moment before returning to stern neutrality. Kody shifted uncomfortably, his eyes narrowing, but his silence betrayed his disintegrating defense. And then finally came the moment everyone least expected. Truly, Christine's youngest, not yet a teenager still but now old enough to tell her truth, made her slow walk to the stand, her thin body nearly engulfed by the chair, her eyes big but firm, and the courtroom breathed as one, knowing that what she would say would hurt most of all, for innocence holds a force that no attorney can possibly have. The attorney asked gently, Truly, can you tell us what you recall about your mom and your dad? Truly's voice was soft, hesitating at first. I recall when Mom said that she was leaving. I recall him yelling. I recall him saying that she was destroying everything. And I recall thinking, but you already destroyed it. Because he wasn't there. He was not present when I was looking for assistance with assignments. He was not present when Mom was crying in the kitchen. He was not present for us. She wept tears down her face, her voice shaking but firming up. I don't care about money. I don't care about properties. I care that he made Mom feel she didn't count. And if Mom doesn't count to him, how could I? The courtroom was silent, no one brave enough to breathe as Christine sobbed, her hands buried in her face, and even Janelle had her hand over her mouth, her shoulders shaking, while Kody looked like he'd been punched, his eyes brimming but his face crumpled between anger and shame, his chest laboring as he looked at his youngest daughter with a face that could no longer hide the truth. The judge leaned in then, her voice serious. This is not about revenge, it is about truth. And the truth, uttered by these children, could not be silenced. The gavel fell once, sharp and final, the session at an end, but the reverberations bore a weight that no one could shake, because what had transpired was more than testimony. It was a reckoning, the voices of the next generation refusing to let the past be erased, refusing to let silence prevail. As the families stood, the gallery hummed with shocked whispers, journalists writing madly, headlines already made about the kids who'd changed the game, about the voices who'd cut through technicalities and ledger books to get to the essence of the case. And as Christine departed the courtroom, escorted by her children, her face running with tears but her head held high, Kody stayed put, his body rigid in his chair, Robin whispering wildly in his ear but his eyes fixed on the door through which his children had vanished, the force of their words bearing down more than any verdict the judge might render. Aside, the world waited, hungry for the next twist, but inside the hearts of those who had heard the children, one truth echoed above all. This was no longer just a legal battle. Undefined. This was the unraveling of a father in the eyes of those who once called him a hero. The final day of the trial arrived with a tension so thick that even the morning air outside the courthouse felt heavy, as though the whole town knew that by day's end, the saga of Kody Brown and Christine Brown's courtroom war would either shatter or redefine what remained of their fractured family. and inside, the atmosphere was electric, every bench filled with reporters, spectators, family members, and silent supporters, all waiting for the conclusion of a drama that had spanned not only legal documents and testimonies but also decades of shared history, betrayal, and broken promises. And as the judge entered, striking her gavel to bring the courtroom to order, the hush was immediate, all eyes fixed on the bench, where justice would soon speak louder than any of the arguments made before. The lawyers stood poised, Christine's team radiating quiet confidence, while Kody and Robin's side bristled with defensive energy, Kody's face set in a rigid mask that barely hid the desperation simmering beneath, because after days of children's testimonies, financial records, and emotional breakdowns, today was not about persuasion, it was about judgment, and the first to speak was Christine's lawyer, rising with deliberate calm, her voice carrying across the room with unwavering precision. Your Honor, over these past sessions, you've heard from witnesses, you've seen evidence, and you've heard the voices of children who carried scars that no legal contract can justify. This case is not just about property or custody, it is about accountability, about whether one person can dominate and diminish another in the name of spiritual authority, and whether that authority holds weight in a courtroom where truth is the only law that matters. And as she spoke, Christine sat tall though tears shimmered in her eyes, her hand clasping Truly's as though drawing strength from the youngest voice that had spoken the loudest truth, while Janelle leaned in slightly, her silent presence a reinforcement of solidarity. The attorney went on, sharper now. We have established how Christine was kept apart, silenced, and gaslight, how her efforts were downplayed, how her efforts to safeguard her children were mocked by a man who professed leadership but exercised favoritism, abandonment, and coercion. We heard from Aspen, who testified to a belittled mother, from Pedon, who testified to abandonment, from Michael T., who testified to an warped ideal of love, and from Truly, whose words of innocence struck to the heart, that if a mother does not matter to a father, then neither do his children. The proof is not only emotional but also factual. Christine financially supported the family for years when Kody allocated resources elsewhere. Christine provided childcare when Kody favored one home, and Christine suffered abuse while continuing to fulfill her duties. The law is unambiguous. Property must be equitably divided, children's voices must be heard, and abuse, physical, emotional, or psychological, cannot be justified by religious or cultural doctrine. Thus, Your Honor, we request an equal division of property, sole custody rights to Christine for Truly with visitation privileges only as deemed healthy, and acknowledgement that Christine was wronged in ways that go beyond legalese but must nonetheless be addressed within them. The attorney sat, the shoulders rising and falling beneath her jacket with the weight of her closing statement, and for a moment the room was silent. Before Kody's lawyer stood, the face strained, the words laced with tension. Your Honor, while we admit the emotional testimony, we must not forget that emotion does not equal law. Mr. Brown has provided for his family, has borne the weight of many households, and has acted in his rights as a husband in a plural marriage, and while fights broke out, they do not equal abuse. The children's testimony, while sincere, is tainted by bias, by years of Christine's resentment, and by the inherent struggles of an out-of-the-mainstream family structure. Reducing Mr. Brown to the role of the villain in this story is not just unjust, therefore it is also risky, as it creates a precedent whereby parental control can be breached by subjective opinion over objective fact. Mr. Brown wants equitable division of property, joint custody, and acknowledgement that his role, while imperfect, has been significant and ongoing. The lawyer's words echoed with assurance, but the mood in the room shifted, the gallery fidgety, the atmosphere heavy with uncertainty, because after days of hearing, the question was not if Kody gave, it was if he had given equally, lovingly, justly, and the response hung like a shadow. Then, in a dramatic turn of events, the judge asked both Christine and Kody to make short personal remarks prior to her decision, and Christine rose slowly, her voice shaking but firm. For years I thought that my value rested in remaining silent, that if I simply gave more, smiled more, obeyed more, perhaps I'd be loved, perhaps I'd be heard. But silence didn't keep me safe, it shattered me, and today, standing here before you with my children grown, with my voice finally heard, I can say I am no longer fearful. I did not come here for vengeance. I came here because I want my daughters to understand that no woman needs to remain where she is not loved, not valued, not seen. I want my sons to understand that leadership is service, not domination. And I want my youngest to have a home where love is never dependent on behavior, where her laughter is never suffocated by rage. Regardless of the decision, I've already won because I spoke up. The room rang out with stifled tears, some holding tissues, others inclining their heads, the gallery carried away on the weight of her words as Christine, with trembling shoulders, returned to her seat, her hand once more reaching out to Truly's, who gripped it with gentle force. Then there was Kody's turn, his body taut, his eyes flashing in a combination of rebellion and desperation, his voice booming at first but cracking in places he didn't mean to. I am not the man they make me out to be. I supported this family on my back. I gave up my time, my strength, my autonomy to support not one, not two, but 4 families, and if I came up short, it was not because I was cruel, it was because I was spent. Christine never comprehended the burden I carried. She never honored my position. She turned the kids against me, poisoned them with her resentment, and now they sit here judging me, forgetting the late nights I worked, the sacrifices I made, the vision I had for all of us. I am not perfect. But I am not a monster. And I shall not sit here and have all the work of decades undermined by bruised feelings and selective recollection. His voice grew louder, his fist slamming onto the table once, resonating throughout the courtroom, but following the sound instead of silence was discomfort, a nervous readjustment in the gallery, as if the tone of his defense fought the very charges against him, and Christine, her face tranquil now, didn't wince, didn't react, her silence greater than his thunder. The judge leaned forward at that point, her face serious, her voice measured as she handed down the verdict. This case has not been easy. It has revealed not just the intricacies of plural marriage and non-traditional family units, but also the intensely private pain they bear within them. The children's testimonies have been particularly compelling, and though the defense contends influence, I find it impossible to ignore the consistency, the clarity, and the bravery with which they testified. They were not coached. They were not rehearsed. They told the truth. And their truth draws a disturbing portrait of disproportion, partiality, and emotional neglect. Thus, I order as follows. Christine Brown will receive sole custody of Truly Brown, with visitation privileges to Kody Brown subject to family therapy and the welfare of the child. The property will be divided fairly, giving consideration to Christine's financial contributions that exceeded what was noted throughout the marriage. In addition, this court recognizes that although not all grievance constitutes legal abuse, the trends outlined above indicate emotional damage that should be considered, if not punished. This decision has nothing to do with revenge. It's about justice, about granting Christine and her children the liberty they fought for, and about holding Mr. Brown accountable, not in moral principle but in legal fact. The gavel came down, hard and final, and the courtroom exploded. Some cheering, some weeping, some whispering furiously. But at its center was Christine, her face crumpling into tears of relief, her children clinging to her, holding her, their voices blending in laughter and cries, while Kody remained still, his face white, his eyes scanning as though seeking some escape, some means of rewriting what had been decided. But there was no rewriting, no appeal that could destroy the voices of his children, no counterargument that could silence the truth that had been stated. As Christine emerged from the courtroom into the staccato flash of cameras, her children in tow, the world came alive in a cacophony of headlines, hashtags, and arguments, but she didn't mind because for the first time in decades she was free, her footfalls lighter, her tears not of sorrow anymore, but of relief, while Kody stayed behind, slumped shoulders, Robin breathing nervously, her hand on his arm. But he couldn't hear her, his ears still ringing with the voices of his children, his heart weighed down by the realization that the image of patriarch, leader, and provider had been shattered, not by the outside world but by the very family he had professed to shield. And as the courthouse doors shut behind Christine, the tale was sealed, not only in court papers but in the hearts of those who had heard it, a reminder that power founded on secrecy eventually topples beneath the weight of truth, and that sometimes the most courageous thing that a human being can do is to stand, to speak, and to refuse to be made invisible again.